Some people can't resist the allure of a mountain. They need to ski it, jump it, conquer it. And each year, thousands of people need to be saved from it. In the French Alps, mountain rescue is a full-time career. To become a rescuer here, you must be willing to drop from helicopters, scale sheer cliffs, and descend into glaciers. These trainees wouldn't have it any other way. The most popular alpine destination in France is Chamonix. Its famous peaks are sirens to mountain lovers. Mont Blanc, the highest point in Europe. The Dru, the Verte, the Grand Joras. Unfortunately, Chamonix mountains also kill about 60 people a year. The death toll would be many times higher if it weren't for an elite mountain rescue squadron of the military police. Every year they rescue 4,000 people. This rescue is typical. The man in red is a skilled mountain climber. His idea of fun on the mountain was interrupted when he was struck by falling rocks. Now he's too injured to climb down, but faces a grave risk if he stays. At night, temperatures will drop below freezing. Without this swift rescue, he could easily die of exposure. This boy was also caught off guard. He thought he was just out for an afternoon hike on a well-traveled glacier. He never expected to fall through the roof of an ice cave. He knows what would have happened if he hadn't received a hand. Helping people out of nightmare situations is the dream job of these military policemen called gendarmes. They have been training for 3 years and now face their final month of mountain rescue school. It's been a taxing 3 years. This class started with 200 candidates. All but these 22 men have been cut, and not everyone here will graduate. On today's training exercise, student Alain Belagamba will be graded on how well he can lead the other students. He's a typical trainee, in his 30s, a wife and kids, with a passion for mountains and for rescue.
This career was a childhood dream. My father was a gendarme rescuer, and when I was young, I watched him fly off in helicopters to rescue people. It looked exciting. So when I turned 18, I joined the gendarmerie, hoping to eventually work in the mountains and fly in helicopters.
Helicopters are used in 75% of all rescues. Instructor Claude Carley ensures they're an integral part of the coursework. The rescue students haven't flown with pilot David Pujol, who explains his own safety procedure.
When you are in the helicopter, don't move around. The helicopter is small. You must pay attention to never interfere with my flying. Your ice picks and your other gear must be inside backpacks where they can't accidentally hit me or the controls. When you are winched down, keep your gear between your legs so it doesn't catch on anything. And don't be stupid with the winch hook. Attaching the hook properly is critical. Pascal, show them what can happen.
If you hook it on and don't hold it out, it can twist around and open. And so pay attention and you won't fall.
The next day, the helicopter training is put into action. A good team loses no time between boarding and takeoff. Today's training, cliff rescue, and there's no skimping on realism. Alain arrives first to secure anchors in the wall. His team flies in next. The helicopter rotors create a vortex of wind that spins the person being winched. The cliffs also bounce this turbulent air toward the chopper. It takes amazing piloting skill to hold the helicopter steady.
I concentrate on the cliff. Sometimes I have to hold the rotor blades less than 2 feet from the rocks. If the metal blades even barely touch the cliff, the chopper will fall. But there is a built-in safety. The blades have plastic tips that will hit first and explode. Then, I'd only have a split second to back off. My winch mechanic is my second set of eyes. I can't even see the rescuer being winched. The mechanic tells me if we have to move left, right or closer. It takes total teamwork.
When each man reaches the cliff, he must immediately attach to Alain's safety anchor. This may be the most crucial moment of winching. The pilot must hold the craft perfectly still because the rescuer is now roped to both the helicopter and the cliff. But he can't unclip from the chopper before securing to the cliff. It'd be what the trainees call a 10-second mistake. That is, a mistake he could live with, but only for 10 seconds. Trainee Olivier Lubianic is sent to play the role of an injured mountain climber. He gets into position about 50 feet below Alain. Alain's job is to reach the victim and transport him to the hospital. Additional rescue trainees are called in for support. The cliff becomes a tangle of people and ropes. Each knot must be checked and rechecked. The crew is also careful not to drop anything straight down. The victim and other rescuers are below. Falling equipment could turn this into a real rescue mission. Anchored on a nearby perch, Instructor Carly watches for mistakes. Alain's first goal is to secure the victim with a white safety rope. In a real rescue, he shouldn't count on the victim's ropes to hold. All of the trainees are expert climbers. Most started climbing as teens. They know how to read the rocks, how to drive the right kind of piton into a crack, and how to set a cam so it's least likely to pull loose and kill someone. They're confident in their footwork and in using their hands. The trainees' challenge throughout the course will be to apply those technical skills to working as a team and leading a rescue team. It's a leap in thinking not every trainee can make.
Okay.
Carly will only stop Alain Belagamba when a mistake could jeopardize safety.
Belagamba, stop. Mettons une auto-assurance sur lui également.
Put an insurance line on him too, so that he is not only on the white line but the static line too.
Olivier's leg is supposed to be broken. Alain decides the fastest way to evacuate him is on his back. It's a good decision. The trainees will later be praised for it. It wasn't a random choice to give Olivier a broken leg. It was prescribed by Dr. Marcigny at the Chamonix Hospital.
That kind of injury, for example, is very common in mountain rescue because the people fall from very high. During the fall, they can break their leg totally. They are very common.
A half hour later, it's still a long way to the bottom. Even from a high mountain path, they're only a speck on the cliffside.
One thing I learned about carrying an injured person on my back is that to prevent putting them into more pain, I had to adopt strange positions that were painful to me. Also, it's important to save my strength during this kind of exercise.
I know it wasn't comfortable for Alan, but being on his back made my legs fall asleep. I hated it. Also, being a climber, it's very awkward not being in control of my own ropes.
2.5 hours after starting the rescue, the mission nears completion. The instructors feel the rescue took too long, but was carried out well. The grade is high. But this was the easy climbing mission. The next is harder and even more dangerous. This is the Grey Pont. It rises 8,000 feet above Chamonix. Pierre Cassin is chosen to lead this practice rescue mission. If he does well, he'll be on the home stretch for his rescue diploma. He is determined to bring enough tools to meet any challenge. Laurent Haas has been volunteered to be the victim. It might be the easiest assignment, but also the coldest. From town, there's no way to tell what the weather will be like 2 miles high. Instructor Carly will be the first to the site. But there is an emergency change of plan. He's needed for a real rescue. A massive rock slide has thundered down the Drou. 3,000 tons of granite fell, scouring a white trail 100 feet wide. The boulders, some as big as houses, barely missed 2 climbers. They need to be taken down before more rocks fall. But the chopper on duty is busy with another rescue. It's up to Carly. Rock falls are common in the Alps. A few years ago, this same mountain was the site of a similar fall. Jean Clemenceau, an experienced mountain guide, was caught in the rain of rocks.
The rocks crushed my helmet. This hole is where a rock smashed my skull. I fainted and fell off the mountain. Luckily, I landed on a ledge 30 yards below. A couple of hours later, a rescuer arrived. Swinging out of the helicopter, he took a foothold on the mountain. But the rock fell on him and hurt his shoulder. We had to climb down so the helicopter could reach us. He didn't come until the next morning. I was in surgery for 7 hours.
Today's Drou victims have been much luckier than Jean Clemenceau. The rocks have stopped falling. Only the dust cloud remains. Just as Carly prepares to descend, the other chopper radios. They have finished their first rescue and can now pluck these climbers off the rock wall. Carly signals the men that help is coming and heads to Mount Grey Pont. 25 years of rescuing have made him ready for anything. Now, on the point of a mountain, he'll teach others what he's learned. Only 100 people a year climb to the top of the Grey Pont. The statue of the Virgin Mary is in for a busy day. 10 rescuers are going to crowd this tiny sentinel. No irreverence is meant toward the statue, but there aren't many handholds up here. Laurent, today's victim, arrives, checks the drop-off, and carefully climbs down to feign his injuries. With the victim in place, Pierre Cassin is called in, and the test of his leadership skills begins. He must quickly survey the situation, come up with a plan, and delegate roles. But before he can react, Carly has a reprimand for Mr. Cassin.
Cassin, oui. J'en profite pour te le dire maintenant parce que tout à l'heure je n'avais pas le temps de te le dire. Cassin, I am going to tell you now because I did not have time before. You are wearing too much equipment to come down the hoist like that. You risk getting hooked in the helicopter. It's dangerous.
Assez clean autour de toi. D'accord?
Ça marche. Quand il faut renforcer le relais.
Next in is Roland Boulanger, number 8 on this tiny high dive platform. Pierre designates Roland to carry the victim to the top, where he can be helicoptered to the hospital.
C'est quoi qui va pas? Quoi ce monsieur?
I have a broken leg.
Anglais tous les deux?
Austria.
Austria. Yeah, good.
Pierre sends a scout down to assess Laurent's injury.
Oh, my leg! Ah! Yes.
Unfortunately for Pierre, his mission hits a major obstacle. He's never used this type of winch before and isn't sure how to set it up. An hour is lost before Pierre can continue. The delay could prevent him from getting his rescue diploma. Today's grade will come from Carly. He knows a man's career is at stake, but he must also weigh the safety of other rescuers and future victims. The winch seems ready. Roland wants to test it before heading down to retrieve Laurent. Roland was inspired to become a rescuer when he was a boy.
I was mountain climbing with my brother and father when I saw them fall. They were seriously injured. I was the only one nearby, but I didn't know how to even call for help, let alone help them myself. It was a terrible feeling I never wanted to have again.
La contre n'est plus tendue.
Autrement, on s'en sort pas. Hein.
Bravo novembre de Paris si tu
Il faut les faire venir. Les gars phoneux là. Attends, on peut venir sur notre gauche. Ça c'est votre vache là. Hein. Et ouais, c'est celle-là.
For Pierre, even the ropes don't seem to work today.
Là ici, si tu peux prendre là éventuellement. Tu vas pour tirer.
Attends, il y a ta vache qui fait chier.
Non, mais bouge pas, je peux derrière toi. Ok.
2 hours after it started, the rescue seems complete. Cleanup begins. But thinking on your feet is a fundamental part of leadership training. So instructor Carly changes the scenario.
It's gotten too windy. The helicopter can't winch the victim from here. You must take him to another place.
At first, Roland thinks it's a joke. It isn't. The trainees are cold and exhausted. Somehow Roland must regain his strength. Laurent just falls back into character. Pierre sends an advance crew to install safety ropes down the other side of the peak. The route will lead to a back ledge that will be safer for the helicopter. Again, Laurent is on Roland's back. As an avid climber, he's used to dangling 7,000 feet in thin air. It's not being in control of the ropes that makes him uneasy. An hour later, the rescue is approaching the wind-protected ledge. Roland is completely exhausted. Now the rescue is considered complete. Pierre knows his grade will be low.
I'm hoping I can perform well over the next weeks and make up for this slow rescue. I think I still have a chance to receive my rescue diploma.
10 months a year, the students receive on-the-job training as apprentices with rescue teams throughout France. 2 months a year, they come to the rescue school in Chamonix to learn new techniques and to be tested. The commander of the High Mountain Rescue School is Robin Joubert.
For me, please. And also that.
He has a reputation for being more demanding than any of his predecessors.
And the friends?
Robin believes the training needs to be rigorous because the risks are so high. A monument in front of the school personalizes the dangers all rescuers face.
It's important to know that a lot of people died practicing their passion and rescuing people. They gave their life for the other, so it's very important to keep it in memory.
There's one danger that kills even the most seasoned experts, the avalanche. These walls of snow can thunder down at over 100 miles an hour. They can knock you off the mountain or push you into a crevasse. Or in less than a minute, you can be buried under 40 feet of snow and ice. If you're buried, the rule of thumb is you'll have 30 minutes to be rescued before you suffocate. That's assuming you weren't crushed or had your neck broken. For rescuers, there is another reason to be quick and efficient. If there was one avalanche, there could be a second that buries the rescuers too. This is a real rescue. It's incredibly risky. Climbers were scaling an enormous ice wall when an avalanche knocked them to their deaths. Now the rescuers must retrieve the bodies. The helicopter can't risk landing and hovers inches above the ground. This day's rescue will be officially logged as a success. The victims may be dead, but they are recovered. Now there can be a proper burial. But you don't have to be an ice-climbing daredevil or a rescuer to be caught in an avalanche. Jean Clemenceau survived falling rocks while climbing Drew Mountain. Years later, his luck was tested again.
I was skiing with a friend. It was very crowded, so we decided to ski outside the main ski path. My friend saw the avalanche before I did. She yelled to me to watch out. It was coming so fast, I could only think to lay down and let it pass. Then I was pushed over a cliff. When it stopped, I realized I was buried. I couldn't move, I couldn't see, only gray light. I cried, then I passed out. The first thing I remembered when I woke up was the rescue dog licking me. They told me I'd been buried for an hour and passing out had saved my life because I used less air. They found my friend when the snow melted, 6 months later.
Avalanche training at the rescue school is as realistic as possible. A recent avalanche site is used, and a volunteer will actually be buried under the snow. But the exercise has a deceptively easy beginning. The trainees must spend the night in a mountain refuge 2 miles high. The thin air will make their sleep fitful. At daybreak, the trainees will battle fatigue and breathlessness, as well as the avalanche. Jean-Marc Bougie has been volunteered to be today's avalanche victim. Not an enviable assignment. It's comparable to lying in your own coffin and having the lid shut.
We brought last year's class to the same spot. The day after our exercise, there was a real avalanche. 5 climbers were swept into a deep crevasse. Then the snow completely filled it. The bodies have never been found.
3 feet of snow separate Jean-Marc from all sights and sounds. The response to Roland's final check is barely heard.
Jean-Marc, ça va? Oh, moi je le connais pas.
With the victim hidden, the trainees are called over from the refuge. This part of the mountain is flat, but that is deceptive. This is the highest altitude for any of the training exercises. At 12,000 feet, there's 40% less oxygen to breathe than at sea level. Even Alain, one of the strongest trainees, is losing strength fast. In this thin air, your breathing speeds up, but you never get the amount of oxygen you're used to. It's hard to think clearly. You feel sluggish. Headaches are common. The trainees must prove they can overcome these difficulties.
Tournez-vous par ici, là, écoutez la situation.
Especially Olivier, who's been chosen to lead today's exercise. He has 30 minutes to find a buried skier. The clock starts now.
Je vais demander également le sac avalanche pour faire une dépose.
Olivier dispatches a sentry to watch out for new avalanches.
Donc l'équipe part en premier, l'équipe Bellagamba, l'équipe Chapelle.
With 25 minutes left, he radios for a dog handler and a doctor to arrive by chopper.
Oui, reçu, le chien est désengagé là. Pour l'instant, on désengage le chien et on continue sur les...
It's the right move. A dog can cover more ground in 20 minutes than 20 people can cover in 4 hours. But if rescuers walk the area first, their sense would confuse the rescue dog. This wastes valuable seconds of the 30-minute countdown. The rescue dog is Jimmy. His master is Michel Gonzalez.
Jimmy loves the helicopter. He gets him excited. He knows it is his time to perform. He has exceptional hearing, but the noise of the chopper doesn't bother him. He's 100% focused. Jimmy can't wait to get started. For him, this is an incredibly fun game. He doesn't realize a life is at stake.
Jimmy is a Belgian Shepherd. Most rescue dogs in France are either Belgian or German Shepherds.
Jimmy is a rescue dog, but first he's a gendarme dog, a military dog. So I've taught him different ways to react. When he's among friends, like my son, on a rescue mission, Jimmy is gentle as a puppy. But I've also taught him what to do when people aren't friendly.
Jimmy, attaque!
The victim has been buried for 25 minutes. 5 minutes more, and the odds of finding a real victim before they've suffocated drop to 50%. Michel thinks Jimmy has found something.
Chef d'opération! Il y a beaucoup de gens. Vous l'avez le secrétariat? Tu vas. Il arrive là. Voilà, c'est bon. Attends. 1, 2, 3. Doucement, il est sorti. Mets-le là.
The victim is found. But before the trainees can leave, they're told a second victim is here. This time, they won't be permitted to use the search dog. Olivier moves in the troops. First, he has them check for a radio help signal. Some skiers and climbers carry special avalanche radios, which automatically transmit a beacon. 35 minutes into the rescue, they find a signal. Radio beacons are not precise. They only help locate the general area where someone is buried. The rescuers must use poles to determine exactly where to dig. It's slow, painstaking work. They probe left, probe right, advance, then do it again. And again. The trainees must learn how to interpret each plunge of their probes. Hard objects are rocks. A little give might be a backpack. Softer still could be a body. This find is a heartbreaker on many real rescue missions. Too often, people mistakenly put their radio beacons in their backpack instead of on their body. In the churning avalanche, backpacks get separated from their owners. The packs get rescued, while the person suffocates. A real rescue operation would continue to probe for the body, but Carly knows there isn't one. He ends the exercise and debriefs the trainees. Olivier did a good job. 40 minutes is acceptable. Mountain rescue has been evolving for hundreds of years. But in the last 10 years, a mountain adventure sport has emerged that requires a new approach to rescue: canyoning.
Going canyoning is like visiting an amusement park. Water slides, places to jump. Sometimes you walk, sometimes swim. You just follow the stream and make it up as you go.
Canyoning was slow to become a popular sport because mountain streams are ice cold. It was the invention of the neoprene wetsuit that let people ignore the cold while they explored the canyons. But stop moving, and the cold will still set in. Losing body heat is a constant danger. It doesn't seem possible, but being cold in a remote canyon can turn the most simple mishap into a struggle to survive. And there are plenty of chances for mishaps. People can break their legs jumping into shallow pools or get trapped in the current. The cold water saps your energy and makes you more susceptible to drowning. Third-year rescue students spend 3 days on canyon rescues, 2 for exercises and a third for the final exam. Day 1. They must prove their agility in a swift mountain river. The water is only 45 degrees. Day 2 of canyon training combines mountain techniques with water skills. The trainees must rappel down this 250-foot waterfall. Day 3, the final canyon exam. David Loyer is drafted for the role of canyon victim. His wetsuit is a little loose. It won't keep him as warm once he's wet, but theoretically the rescuers won't let him get wet. Dr. Cousineau is here to practice his own skills. Since doctors usually go on rescues, his presence only adds to the realism.
We are playing as if it's a real traumatism. Yes. So I'm going there. I don't know where is going to be the guy. We are trying to be the more realistic as possible. The big problem in the canyoning for the medical part is that we have very few information before. So it's always a big surprise. We have to take very big bags, very heavy, with everything in it.
Petit bilan, on le médicalise. Pendant ce temps, j'ai l'équipe de tête.
Dennis Ramelet has been assigned to lead this rescue.
Toi. Et puis,
He designates Roland to organize downstream efforts. Maximo Lopez is to install the initial ropes. The portable stretcher is outfitted with floats to help the rescuers transport the victim in deep water. Then it's a 10-minute hike to the victim. David is supposed to have back and neck injuries. He's a good actor. Dr. Cousineau is also taking the scenario very seriously. He instructs Pierre to get the IV solution ready. David wonders just how far Dr. Cousineau is going to take the realism. But the needle is held in place with a bandage. Meanwhile, the rescuers must figure out how they will get the stretcher downstream. The first obstacle is a 30-foot waterfall. In a real rescue at this location, the victim would be carried back along the path or taken out by helicopter. But things have been made harder for the exam. The instructors have told the trainees to keep all their movements within the stream banks, as if the canyon walls were 100 feet high. Since he can't go around the falls, team leader Dennis can only take the stretcher over them. Maximo is to secure a line that leads to the bottom of the falls, and the stretcher will be lowered like a cable car. Pierre is sent to check the line's tension, but isn't convinced it's right. Dennis checks it and thinks it will be good enough. This is his first big mistake. The consequences will be dire. The second foreshadowing of trouble is the difficulty in communicating with Maximo. The falls are noisy. It's hard to hear above their roar. Dr. Cousineau finished David's initial treatment. Now he must go to the bottom of the falls and wait for him. For Cousineau, there is only one way down. Maximo can't hear the shouts to let the rope out more quickly, and he can't see over the lip of the waterfall. The falling water is many times more forceful than a fire hose. It crashed into David's face and forced its way into his lungs and stomach. Roland rushes to David. CPR may be necessary. David throws up, but stays conscious. Dr. Cousineau wants to stop the exercise. David insists it go on. It would reflect badly on his teammates. He wants to minimize the damage to their careers. But the disaster at the falls has eroded the team's confidence, and the next obstacle is even more daunting. A 50-foot drop with a horseshoe bend. The trainees are determined not to repeat their blunder. They spend half an hour just planning their attack. Another hour and a half goes to anchoring the ropes. Their overcautiousness backfires. They've kept David wet, cold, and immobile for over 2 hours. His body temperature has dropped 2.5 degrees. Cousineau administers hot air. If David's temperature drops 1 more degree, this will technically become a medical emergency, hypothermia. Dr. Cousineau now practices real medicine.
It's not pretending anymore, and it's going to be worse and worse. And I asked the guys to be quicker, a lot quicker than they are. My job is to prevent any real accidents.
Dr. Cousineau considers ending the exercise again, but David sees the ropes already, and the doctor relents. David's temperature has dropped another degree. Now Dr. Cousineau decides to end the exercise. The risks for David are too great. They need to get him dry and warm.
We prefer stop it just before the end, just because this guy was in hypothermia, really hypothermia. So I think it's not worth it for an exercise to put this guy in danger. They're learning, you know, it's normal.
Toubi, j'ai tes trucs là.
The debriefing starts with an icebreaker.
You guys almost killed David. What went wrong?
Il faut demander à David.
David a respiré souvent.
Non, il y a une explication qui est simple. N'importe qui répond ou quoi?
There is a simple explanation. This is an exercise. We are here to learn. Most of us have never done a real rescue in a canyon.
David says he doesn't blame Dennis for nearly drowning him. But back at the school's dormitory, there is playful retribution. On a steep canyon wall or on a mountain, it's easy to remember that you can fall to your death. On a glacier, it's hard to believe it's even possible. But every year, people die on these glaciers. And every year, the gendarmerie help an additional 100 people escape death here. Glaciers fool people into letting down their guard. When you're walking on a glacier, it feels like solid ground. In reality, the ground is hundreds of feet below. It's more like blindly walking across the roof of a skyscraper. You never know if your next step will be onto the adjacent building or a free fall down an ice crack called a crevasse. It would seem like you could avoid crevasses altogether by walking or skiing around them. But what appears to be solid ice could be only a snow bridge that will collapse under your weight. Once inside, crevasses are sophisticated death traps. It is virtually impossible to climb out. There are no handholds, and you can't readily make them. The ice walls are rock hard. Crevasses narrow as they go down, so victims are wedged at the bottom. And the situation only gets worse. Body heat melts the ice. Victims slip further into the funneling slot, where it's too narrow for rescuers to go. The melting ice creates another complication. It soaks the victim's clothes. Wet skin loses heat 25 times faster, and many victims die of exposure. Even people rescued quickly can suffer painful frostbite. At the Chamonix Hospital, Dr. Marcigny has seen so many frostbite cases, he's published a paper on it and created an internet website. In Chamonix, the premier glacier is the Mer de Glace, or the Sea of Ice. Getting there is simple. A cogwheel train brings anyone with a ticket up the mountain to the edge of the glacier. At the top, you can simply enjoy the view. In the winter, 80,000 people ski on the glacier. In the summer, they hike. And all year round, some people fall into crevasses. Carly brings his trainees to the Mer de Glace to learn crevasse rescue techniques. First, he hunts for the perfect location, a deep, narrow crevasse where they can make plenty of mistakes. On the glacier, Carly immediately sets snow anchors and ropes himself in. He doesn't want to become an unplanned crevasse victim. Next, the fake victims arrive and take their positions. Carly radios for the exercise to begin. Roland has been assigned to lead the rescue. So far, he has one of the highest grades of all the trainees. But Roland's about to make a big error. This man's partner has fallen into a crevasse. He's holding his safety rope, keeping him from crashing hundreds of feet to the bottom. Roland should assign a rescuer to grab the rope. The hiker might be tired. He could let go before the rope is secured to a snow anchor. Despite the trouble Pierre had earlier with the winch, Roland assigns him to set it up while additional rescuers arrive. While the stretcher is assembled, Jean-Marc is dispatched to quickly get to the victim, to calm him and assess his condition. As soon as it's ready, Laurent brings the stretcher. Almost immediately, there is a problem with tangled ropes.
Okay. Mike.
Laurent puts an ice anchor in to help support his weight. While the rescuers put the victim into the stretcher, the topside crew struggles to be ready. The winch cable is completely tangled and would be dangerous to use now. Laurent, Jean-Marc, and the victim can only dangle and wait. The clock is ticking. Their grades are dropping.
En fait, ce genre d'exercice en crevasse me fait toujours penser à un secours que
This crevasse exercise always makes me think of a real rescue I did.
toute une expérience.
Well, two rescues really. One was at the Tour Ronde, that peak over there.
A group of hikers were roped together and fell into a crevasse, one on top of the other. Carly was the only rescuer thin enough to fit in the crevasse, but even he couldn't reach the victims.
Then I tried to go down head first, and I could reach the topmost people. There were hands grabbing me, and the people were agonizing. I rescued them, but there were others further down. It was a very difficult moment for me to see there were victims dying and I could not save them.
Only a few days later, Carly was on a similar rescue. Tourists had walked off the path with flat shoes instead of spiked ice boots. They slipped, couldn't stop, and fell into a deep, narrow crevasse. Even head first, Carly couldn't reach them, so he ran to the machine shop that services the cable car and quickly devised a special hook.
I crawled back into the crevasse, head first, and started to fish. The idea has come to me after the fair rescue a few days earlier. My hook inspired the invention of a similar device that's now available to all rescuers.
After a 20-minute delay, Roland's team has fixed the winch cable and thinks the exercise is all but done. They don't realize the hardest part is still to come. The ascent from the frozen Hades is swift. Until the stretcher, heavy with its passenger, reaches the lip. Trainee Yannick Audurier is completely immobilized in the stretcher. If he fell now, there is no way he could help himself. It's a true test of his trust in his teammates.
Normalement, le treuil, pour l'instant, tu le bloques, on n'en a pas besoin. Oh.
The glory of reaching the top is short-lived. Instructor Carly informs the team that there is a second victim in a nearby crevasse.
I throw the surprise of a second victim to every group of students, and each year I see the same mistakes. The trainees perform the first rescue by the book, but they are caught off guard by the possibility of a second victim. Their instincts take over. They yank the second victim up as fast as possible with little thought to the victim's medical condition. They are psychologically and supply-wise ill-prepared.
Okay, le petit dernier là-bas. Viens donc, Audurier.
Okay,
Okay.
let's end the exercise here. I want to give you some feedback. I'm not going to criticize every detail. For me, there are only two important points. The first is only people going down in the crevasse need crampons. When you are up here, you could step on the safety rope, sever it, and someone could drop.
Là, vous avez vite fait dans l'affolement parce que là, ce n'est qu'un exercice.
Second thing, the other victim. Always be prepared for the unexpected. You never know what you'll find when you arrive.
As the trainees wait for the helicopter, two hikers pass them on their way down the glacier. Carly's advice to always be ready rings true. One of the hikers falls into a crevasse and has to be rescued. The field exercises are done. A written test officially ends 3 years of training.
The students did a good job. The best were Alan and Roland. They have natural charisma. Not only will they receive the rescue diploma, they'll get a special leadership diploma.
Dennis was able to make up for his poor grade on the canyon fiasco and also receives his diploma. But Pierre did not graduate. He'll have to practice his technique and will get one more chance next year. None of the trainees are based here in Chamonix. Tomorrow they will disperse to their hometowns throughout France, most bringing along their hard-earned titles. They are now officially high mountain rescuers.
Some complained that we work them too hard, graded too harshly. I don't have to make any excuses. They are going to face amazingly difficult rescue situations. Now, they'll be prepared. That's how you reduce the risk, stay safe yourself, and save lives.